You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Wednesday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. All the other places where you can hear this show in its audio format, such as Spreaker, YouTube. Well, YouTube is where you're going to go see the live video simulcast, but you can go over to Apple iTunes. You can go over to, what's one of the other ones? Not iTunes, iHeartRadio. There you go. Wow, I had a mental block going there. So all those places where you can hear us in audio format. You can also see all the stuff that Odyssey Radio puts up on its dial 24/7 and other times of the day where you can hear rebroadcasts of this program. And come on over to my YouTube channel, as already mentioned, over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And over there, you're going to see the live video simulcast of this show. And at the same time, you can join the live chat room, which is going on right now. And that's one of the best parts of the YouTube experience of this show, is being able to join the other Intrepids over there and talk about what we're talking about on the show, or a myriad of other things that they like to talk about. So go on over, have some fun, join the show, already in progress in its video format on my YouTube channel. All right, folks. Yesterday, we were, all this week, we've been talking about things like gaslighting, things like fake news, things about filter bubbles and echo chambers, and how to avoid them, how to look for them, how to spot them, how to look at fake news that's out there and try to decide for yourself, how to critically think your way through these things, how to apply when you get into these many social media arguments. If you can't avoid them and they're thrust upon you, keep in mind Sitchin's Law. And there's Sitchin. I got that mixed up with Hitchens. Sorry, Sitchin is a totally different thing. That's Zachariah Sitchin. Just popped into my mind. When you're talking about reptilians, you're talking about ancient aliens. Sitchin's name gets brought up an awful lot. So, sorry about that. Hitchen's Law. Hitchen's Law, which says what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. And so it's critical thinking that you want to engage in. So we've been talking about this all week long. And so I want you to think about how you get your news, how you process it. We know Donald Trump wasn't the first one to come along and say the media is presenting fake news. He just capitalized on it. And so you've got to look at breaking news. Is it fake or is it real? And I've got some tips for you to help you avoid what's called the my side bias. And we run into that all the time. I could go over to my YouTube page, my Facebook page right now, and I could find for you all kinds of my side bias. Now, I put up things, of course, that support what I believe. Things that I've thunk about, critically speaking, thunk about. And, of course, you get the other side will come in of the equation and present their views. Many times what I see are people that will resort to rhetoric from within their worldview, within their echo chamber, within their filter bubble, and they can't believe that there's anybody outside their echo chamber that could believe anything differently. But you present it, and sometimes you end up with an argument, sometimes you end up with good conversation. Is it my job to try to convince anybody? If somebody wants to approach me with critical thinking, it's sometimes worth the conversation. Until you realize that all they're trying to do is change your mind. It's like, look, great conversation. I love you. I respect you. You've been my friend for 20 years. But we're going to move that aside. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. You're not going to convince me to change my mind. But I found those same people will come along and think that they're changing the minds of people who read my posts. And many times, some of those people, I'll throw up a post. I threw up a post about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with what happened, whether you believe it's fake or real, when he got out of the hospital and he said, I'm feeling better, I feel good, and I don't want us to fear this thing. Because, frankly, the echo chambers and the filter bubbles on the other side of that issue are all about fear-based. Being fearful to go anywhere, fearful to gather together, fearful to do anything. And I predicted from within perhaps my echo chamber and my filter bubble that those things are being said, and you see everything is pointing toward the election. They don't want people out voting en masse unless it's for their particular side of the equation. And I believe that that's a real thing. The last time we saw voting for the president take place the way we're seeing this election starting to shape up was in the 1860s. I think it was the election of 1867. And it was after the death of Abraham Lincoln. And it was when Johnson was being contested. I don't know if Johnson ran that time or not. Was it Buchanan that came next? I can't remember which election it was, but in 1867, it was an election that, because of the Jim Crow laws in the South that they wanted to put forward, because of Reconstruction after the Civil War, the Democrats in the South needed to win that election. And they needed to make sure, and they tried to pull every election law trick in the book to screw up the election so badly that there would be no way to determine who won the election without it going to the House, in which case then there would be a vote in the House, and in which case they would at the very least, be able to present their rules and regulations for Jim Crow laws and things like that. Now, we haven't seen this done since then, 150 years later. And we're seeing it done now, and what they're saying is that this is a crucial election. Why do you think somebody like a Joe Biden could be surging up in the polls, could be doing well? Why do you think they even chose him? Because they thought he was the safe bet to get somebody in office. And he's appointed, I say they have appointed, a vice president that's going to be somebody that will be able to take over. There is the vice presidential debates, which I haven't had a chance to, I watched them, but I haven't had a chance to critique them yet. And you'll get some of that from me tomorrow. But I want you to pay attention to what you're hearing in the news. Pay attention to critical thinking. This is why it's good to know why you believe what you believe. We talked about that when it came to religious and spiritual beliefs. How about applying that now to your political ideologies? Why do you believe what you believe? Can somebody come along and tell you socialism is a better form of government, and you got nothing? So you need to know critically why you believe what you believe. So breaking news, this big thing about breaking news, is it real? Is it fake? What do you pay attention to? How do you avoid the my side bias and recognize the types of fake news? So nowadays, just about anybody can produce and post news on the internet and social media. I'm doing it right now. I'm creating news for you via my own channel on YouTube and my own radio show on Odyssey Radio Network. And so it's not a surprise that fake news, accusations of fake news, attempts to help people avoid becoming victims of fake news are all hot topics of discussion nowadays. And fake news tends to take you in one direction while facts will take you in another. Fake news is usually built upon your emotions, the way people feel about things. This is how I feel about this, and listen to your feeling. Facts are based on facts don't care what you feel. Facts are facts. They're not based on emotions. So fake news stories, can be hard to detect because they intend to deceive and influence, and they often prey on particular sets of beliefs. Psychologists, especially those in the cognitive and the social arenas, are all trying to understand the implications of fake news and figure out ways to empower people to detect it and to reject it. For example, David Rapp and his colleagues have actively pursued research to help people detect false information and avoid using it later. And there's an important step in their ongoing research that involves documenting the different types of fake news so we can become aware of how they exert their influence over us and where and when these things occur. And so this knowledge can also be useful for developing instructional approaches and simple suggestions for consumers and for people who consume the news and how they determine, how they filter the news and use it. So I want to discuss some of the different types of fake news, and each of which might require different strategies to combat their allure and their problematic consequences of exposure to them. One type of fake news appears when articles, now you've seen this, you've run across this, there are articles out there and news pieces that intentionally contain false information. For example, the fake Pizzagate story that surfaced during the last election cycle on social media and pseudo-news sites. We can protect ourselves against this type of fake news by taking the time and the effort to critically think through the information and realize that it's false. Now, by the way, regarding Pizzagate, there are still proponents of that being a factual story. I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. But that is one example of some fake news that was put in to try to spur people to think one way. But there are still those that push that story. However, we often don't have the time. We don't take the effort to spend on this kind of thing. And if we rely on surface level reading of these kinds of fake news articles, we're at risk of being deceived. Now, this is especially true when the points in a news story are consistent with our own points of view. This is called my side bias. Oh, that story is really espousing what I believe, so I'm going to believe the story. And it's one of the biggest challenges we face in detecting and rejecting fake news. My side bias can lead us to believe something that is untrue or dismiss news that actually has merit. So simply rejecting news as fake because it doesn't align with what we believe is also part of the fake news problem. Now, a second type of fake news is clickbait headlines. Ever read a headline that claimed something outrageous, and only to learn that the evidence for that claim was weak at best once you read into the article? Headlines can be more memorable than the content of some articles, and media sites make money every time you click on an article. So the goal is to get you to read the article, often with less concern about the truth contained in the article. So you'll notice way blown out of proportion sensational headlines. Things like, I used to see this with, and it was a conservative site. There was a conservative news site, and I can't remember the name of it. They were conservatively biased, but they would use headlines like, Hillary Clinton arrested today. And then you go, whoa, really? I got to click that open. And you open it up, and it says, in the heated debate over the blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't it be great if we read a headline like that? Well, here's the story about the ongoing investigation. And many times it has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton being arrested or whatever that headline might be. But what they've effectively done is they put out a headline that makes you click to read the story, and they get paid for that. So media sites make money every time you click on an article. Their goal is to get you to open it up. Now, a third type of fake news is even more subtle. It involves overly dramatic headlines. Sometimes particular news topics are highlighted as important or of public concern, but actually aren't truly newsworthy at all. Do we really care about how many scoops of ice cream the president gets with his dessert? I don't. I don't give a rat's ass. And does that really tell us anything about his presidency? Not really. So, focusing on these news topics, or by the way, how many pints of expensive ice cream Nancy Pelosi has in her really expensive refrigerator. So, focusing on these types of news topics draws attention away from other more pertinent and important news issues. So while the information presented might be true, it's not really newsworthy, but it draws our attention away. So fake news is nothing new. However, combating it necessitates both a willingness to be skeptical and literacy skills that help individuals know when something is wrong and what to do about it. So I've got some recommendations for you here about what to do, how you detect and reject false news, fake news. You ready for these? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. All right? So number 1, how to detect and reject fake news. Be aware of the power of my-side bias. Some news outlets could be trying to make money by catering to your beliefs. So when you see an article that comes up in your feed, the algorithm has brought that article to you, it's generally because they've detected somewhere along the way that this is your side of the equation. And they will give you and feed you articles with titles that make you want to click them, that feed your side, your my-side bias. Something about, I don't know, it could be as simple as, Hillary Clinton down in the numbers, Joe Biden sex scandal, and these might be things that draw you in to read them. So be aware of the power of my-side bias. Number 2, pay attention to the author and the source. Look at who's writing it. Look at where it comes from. If an article doesn't list an author, that's a big clue that the article might be fake. And I've found that many times, even this week. I've looked at articles and I go, there's no author here. I'm not going to even read this. Reputable news outlets are much less likely to produce entirely fake articles. But you should be carefully examining and evaluating those articles too. Number 3, evaluate the potential reasons for posting a news story. Now, news outlets have agendas, and one common goal is to get you to read and share their article because they want the clicks. So evaluate the potential reasons for getting that news story, for having it appear. Number 4, when people make claims in articles, look closely at the evidence they support, or that they present to support those claims. This is something we talked about yesterday. If the evidence isn't there, what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. So when they make claims, look closely at their evidence. And make sure if the evidence is obviously an opinion, that particular claim may not be as useful as one that includes evidence to back up the statement. Let's go with that Hillary Clinton being arrested type of a topic. Let's say you see, Hillary Clinton indicted today, and you open it up and somebody's talking about all the facts behind why she should be indicted, and then you find that those aren't really facts, those are the opinions of the author or the opinions of the news agency that's coming through. It's like the New York Times. The New York Times doesn't present journalism anymore. The New York Times presents opinion. So you got to watch out for those stories. Just because it's a big news name like, I don't know, like the New York Times, like Fox, like CNN, like any of them, you've got to look at what their bias is. And it's like the New York Times, their bias is clearly anti-Trump. So anything you read about Trump from the New York Times is generally going to be rife with opinion about Trump. MSNBC, just a couple of days ago, one of the commentators commented on the picture of Trump standing saluting on the balcony after his release from the hospital and said, "This is Trump's Mussolini moment." Did you hear that? There's actually a news service, MSNBC, said this is Trump's Mussolini moment. standing and saluting on the balcony. What does that do to the viewers of that network when you hear that? It either enrages you if you're actually watching it, and most times people who disagree with MSNBC's bias against Trump aren't going to be watching it anyway. So what does that do? It bolsters the viewers, their points of view, the my side bias. Okay, number 5. Pay attention to how an author obtained his or her information. It's like the New York Times when they did the big thing on Trump's taxes. How did they obtain that information? Because taxes cannot be released to the public. They're private information. How'd they get their information? Verifiable sources can be trusted more than those that are unidentified or ambiguous. How many articles do you read? An unnamed White House source stated today, and some people go crazy apeshit over that stuff because they go, it was a guy in the White House said that. Oh, maybe it was a woman in the White House. How do you know it was even somebody in the White House? They won't name them. So there's going to be times when news outlets must keep their sources anonymous. That you have to defend. But you also have to weigh with a grain of salt the information you're getting if they are unable to or unwilling to name their source. You go, okay, I get it. Your source can't be named. This is information I can put in my unverifiable stack. So number 6, make sure that the headlines match the content of the article. I've seen that before. The whole thing about Trump's taxes, the headlines on that, I don't remember what the headline read, but you had to dig way into the article to find out that they also did a little bit of fact-checking about the taxes, about Trump having actually prepaid $1 million in 2016 and $4.2 million in 2017. He prepaid that. And then what he had to pay at the end was $750 because he'd already paid in $4.2 million. So, but that's not the way the headline reads. So when you read an article, number 7, when you read an article, think about whether its content really matters in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes you're going to see stuff that who the hell cares? Has no bearing, no pertinence on anything. It's just to gin people up. And then number 8, most importantly, be a critical thinker. Question what you read. Even if it lines up with what you believe, question it. So you got to arm yourself to avoid being fooled by the fake news that's out there. And be able to determine, to detect and reject fake news. So those are 8 things that you can do. And folks, we got to go out to break. It's the end of the first segment. And so we're going to go out to break now. You guys sit tight. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. You hang on.
looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, we're back. Thanks for sitting on through that break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio and all the different outlets where you can hear this show. Also, come on over and see the video simulcast of this show over at my YouTube channel. Join the live chat room, which is already on fire and has been going for a half an hour already. So come on over and join the other Intrepads over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And you can actually see my face and watch my mug talking as you're listening. And join that chat room over there. You can also, while you're at my YouTube channel, go subscribe, hit the little subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and then you can go down at your leisure and you can look at the Intrepid Radio section of my YouTube page, and you can hit play all, and it will show you a list of over 300 different videos. As a matter of fact, let's see, I'm just going to look right now. If I go there right now and I hit play all, right now this moment, no, don't hit play all. Right next to play all, it just simply says, you see it's already playing, and I don't want it to. All right, you can go over there and you can click, instead of play all, hit the Intrepid radio program, all episodes, and you're going to see a list of 301 videos from last night backwards to the beginning of this show on Odyssey Radio. You can also go over to my YouTube channel, and you can look. I've got all my uploads is the first category. Then there's the Intrepid radio program. Then there's my King David series is in a separate section. My commentary on different things over the years is in there. The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare, which I read chapter for chapter. I've got book readings on the Nephilim, the Reptilians, and the Exodus, 3 of my books that you can go in and hear chapter by chapter where I've read and done commentary on those books. You can see my Egyptian adventures, different videos from when I've traveled to Egypt. And you can see our paranormal research, Rocky Stucci and I, John Ward when he was with us, doing our paranormal stuff. And I've also got a family section. You can see some cool stuff down there about my family if you care to. So I've got all sorts of videos you can look at over on my YouTube page. And so go on over, become a member, join my page, and you'll get this show every day. All right, and join the live chat room going on right now. And at the same time, I might as well throw in there, as most of you already know, and if you are watching the YouTube video, you saw this during the break, you saw my ad for my art and design, my illustration work, my graphic design work, my book cover design work, book illustration work, corporate identity work, all that stuff that falls under, you could say, marketing and ad agency graphics and creative work. That's what I do. That's what I've always done for a living. So come on over if you want to my website, ScottAllenRoberts.com. Somebody's probably already typing that into the chat room. And you can visit. You can look at my work. And if you need any of that kind of work, I'm your guy. Or give me a call, and my phone number's all up there and everything. So there you go. Thanks for listening to that little personal ad. Now, taking up where we left off on the first segment, where we talked about fake news, fake information that's out there, and something we've really been kind of focusing on all week and part of last week, the question is, can we stop the spread of misinformation? And by the way, just to update you, in case you don't think about things in this way, the shows that I have done over the last week and a half, we could go all the way back to, let's go back to, remember we were doing shows on the Exodus and Avaris, the capital of Goshen in Egypt, the Northern Kingdom. On Monday of last week, we started this series with finding out what truly matters to us. Then Tuesday of last week, the unmaking of America, if you remember that. Wednesday, a week ago today, bridging the gap, unity out of polarization in America. Last Thursday, the echo chambers and filter bubbles. Was that Friday? I'm trying to look here. Oh, yeah. Monday was the historical Joseph. Then Tuesday we went on. So that was Friday's show. Then this week, what have we done this week since Monday? Gaslighting on Monday. What was gaslighting? Yesterday, critical thinking and Hitchens' razor. And now today, we're talking about, can we stop the spread of misinformation? What is fake news and how does it hit us? And this is big. It's big right now. We got a big election coming up. And not being political or promoting one. You all know where my vote is. You all know what I believe. But at the same time, I believe I've arrived at that decision through critical thinking. Now, you could arrive at the opposite decision through your critical thinking. But what you've got to do is make sure you put all these things into place that we've been talking about over the last week and a half. And we're at right now, can we stop the spread of misinformation? And misinformation has already infected social media, but maybe we can inoculate ourselves against it. It's not a killer like COVID, but it's something that we have to figuratively inoculate ourselves against. Fake news, misleading memes, conspiracy theories in social media. Is there any way to stop people from spreading misinformation and disinformation? Yesterday, on my Facebook page, I put this up. Rainey, my wife, showed this to me. And I started and I said, I got this from Rainey. Needed to post it. Couldn't help it. And I just didn't put ha ha ha. It shows a woman wearing an Uncle Sam hat sitting in a crowd wearing a Hillary Clinton button. And she's got her head back and she's in sorrow and weeping. And it says, that feeling when Trump fully recovers, donates his plasma to develop a COVID treatment, and your doctor tells you after injecting you with a vaccination made from his blood. Now that's as fake news gets. It's satire. Nobody's going to be injected with Donald Trump's blood. And that's not usually how they make COVID or any kind of inoculations. But that right there is really about as fake as it gets, and it was meant to be comedy. And of course, I had somebody come in who's a skeptic. I've talked about him before, very much on the left. Whenever he posts stuff, and I ask him, look, you're skeptical of everything. Why aren't you skeptical of yourself and the things that you're posting? He was the first one to come in and post in here, I don't think that's how they actually make vaccines. And I said, you're spot on. That isn't how they make vaccines. And I said, but I'm glad you're critically thinking. And so, and he's a critical thinker. He's a good thinker. I wouldn't hold that against him at all, except he's also very my side bias. So social media should be a lovely place to, watch cat videos, which I hate. To see pictures of your friends visiting interesting places, and serve as a quick source for news of the world. But I worry about the spread of misinformation. Why is there so much misinformation on social media? And we all probably contribute to that in one way or another. When people encounter misleading information or social media, on social media in the news, they might believe and decide to share that information. And their friends see the misinformation and they share it too. And on it goes, exponentially spread. So misinformation develops a life of its own. It infects social media. But if misinformation is like a virus infecting social media, are there ways to inoculate ourselves against it? Are there internet antibiotics, so to speak, to eliminate the contagion of misinformation? So stopping the spread of misinformation is going to be a serious challenge for us all. And sometimes we can only stop it as far as it comes to us, and we stop it there, and we don't in turn spread it on. And we have to first understand the nature of the problem. Now, once, by the way, I spread misinformation from a meme. It was when they were talking about the wall and how Nancy Pelosi had a wall up around her house, but she was opposing the wall that Donald Trump wanted to build on the southern border. But she had her own wall. And then you come to find out the picture of the house in the meme wasn't her house at all. So that wasn't her wall. And so you had to do a little more digging. Somebody pointed that out to me, and I had to, with only a mild bit of egg on my face, say, yep, I passed on that meme. That wasn't actually her house, and I didn't look into it. I didn't even think about looking into it. And so you have to understand the nature of the problem of this type of misinformation. Some people intentionally spread misinformation. Now, that's always been a mystery to me, because I don't want to win something or come out on top of the argument knowing that I've presented false information to get there. That takes away the satisfaction, and that makes my case weak. If I have to use misinformation to bolster my case, how strong is my case on its own merits? So spreading misinformation is a choice, and often a profitable choice, as we already talked about in the first segment. For others, spreading misinformation is a political job, and in these cases, you should think of it as disinformation. The goal of political bad actors is often to discourage participation by overwhelming people with misleading information. That's how they accomplish their goals. But alone, these bad actors should be hidden in the hard-to-find corners of the internet. But they're not. Of course, in reality, there isn't any hard-to-find corners of the internet. Google's going to find it for you. Unless you're a conservative, and then Google puts you way down at the bottom of a list of 1,000 entries. So YouTube is going to queue up misleading information and conspiracy theories for the next suggested video you should watch. And all of us are going to encounter some false information. And much of that false information will be intentionally planted. So the real problem of misinformation is the spread of information. There are people intentionally planting and promoting lies out there. But each one of us may be what Kate Starbird in 2019 called an unwitting agent. An unwitting agent. What is that? The unwitting agent. How disinformation spreads through bots and trolls and all of us. And there's misconceptions about disinformation that leave us vulnerable to manipulation online. And we could go into that even deeper. But each time we decide to share a piece of information on our social media channels, we contribute to the spread. And people are constantly sharing misinformation. More than likely, you're going to see the same false news several times in your social media, as many of your friends decide to share that information. So the repetition of false information will make that information feel truer, or something called the illusory truth effect. The illusory truth effect. And you know what that is? The illusory truth effect is something that truth or truthfulness in the Facebook echo chamber echoes back what we want to hear, leaving us with truthiness rather than truth. And so that illusory truth effect. If the misinformation starts to feel true, you may decide to believe that it's true and share it around. Thus you, I, all of us, become this unwitting agent of the people trying to spread misinformation and disinformation. And you may find yourself, with all the Russia talk that went on for the last few years, you might find yourself actually helping Russian bots undermine our democracy. Which, don't get me wrong, there was no collusion between Trump and the Russians, but the Russians and other nations have tried to bring us down, and they will do that through disinformation and misinformation. And you might be helping them by the way you spread the information that they put out. And you may not ever know that they are the ones who put it out. You may support the people trying to stop us from doing something about bettering our democracy. You may lead parents to whatever decision they may come to on vaccinating or non-vaccinating their children. And so I'm not making a statement on either side of that, either one of those issues I just stated. I'm just saying that if you listen to the false information that can be put out there, you might be spreading information that isn't the truth. And we all think we are careful thinkers, don't we? Everyone believes that other people are vulnerable to fake news. They're vulnerable to fake news, but not me. We're confident that we wouldn't do this at all. We couldn't fall prey to that. Unfortunately, none of us are immune to this figurative virus. We can all spread misinformation. And there ain't a single one of us that's immune from doing this. And I've done it. You've probably done it. We've all probably done it. We're all vulnerable, but I'm immune, is the way we think. Should we be worried about the impact of rumors or fake news on others? Do you worry about rumors, gossip, fake news? Are you concerned about it? False information might change other people's minds about things. But of course, we're all immune, aren't we? Have you ever noticed how some people seem to be easily influenced or falling for whatever biased information is presented to them? Aren't you concerned about how rumors change what your friends believe? Those rumors may change the way people feel about you and the way people treat you. Look at the whole thing about, pardon me if you've got your kids listening to this at this late hour, but remember the news stories that came out about Donald Trump wanting to have prostitutes urinate on him? That came out last election. You know what? People love that kind of story. It's a rumor, but how many people do you suppose fell prey to it? Or maybe you're worried about the impact of fake news. Everyone seems to be concerned about fake news these days. Information circulates on social media. Misinformation is promoted on various websites and sometimes in supposedly fair and balanced news sources. Places like Fox News, places like CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, all of them present themselves as being, well, we're fair and balanced, we're all journalists here. But a lot of it is opinion news. So simply put, we often worry that other people are easily influenced and changed by negative information. But we also believe that we would never fall for the fake news ourselves. I'm convinced that I don't change how I interact with others based on fake news and rumors. I'm convinced of that myself. And this makes for an interesting and important distinction. We believe other people are easily swayed, but think that we're immune to the powers of persuasion. Our belief in our immunity is a form of egocentric bias. Egocentric. Our ego's at the core of that, and we're biased toward that. It's a bias that believes that we are better than other people, better at disseminating news, better at dissecting news, better at understanding the world. And this difference in belief about who is affected by persuasion is a well-known effect, and it's called the third-person effect. And this was defined by Davidson in 1983. This difference between others being vulnerable, but the self being immune, could occur for a number of reasons. We may overemphasize how much others change in response to receiving negative information. Conversely, we may underestimate how much we change, falsely believing that we're immune. The general assumption has often been that people like us incorrectly overestimate how much others are influenced, and that we worry too much about the impact of misinformation and rumors. And to be honest, I looked at this set of research with hope. I was hoping that maybe the impact of rumors and fake news was less than I and others had suspected. And maybe we're right about ourselves, that we're not particularly influenced by false information. And this would mean that our concerns for others is actually overblown. And if we aren't impacted, then probably they aren't either. But maybe I don't need to worry so much about these rumors and this fake news. And so there's been all kinds of investigations done into this kind of thing. And how are we going to stop this? If none of us are immune to it, we can all spread misinformation. How do we stop it, is the question. I'm going to make two suggestions here. The first is somewhat obvious. Social media and other internet companies need to be more careful. Boom. Shazam. There's a flash of lightning enlightenment for you. All these companies need to be more careful. For example, YouTube shouldn't queue up videos with information that's known to be false. And Google should really help move that information into the hard-to-find corners of the internet. Now, the only problem with this is when you have disagreement on those. So I'm talking about information that is known to be false. But you don't always see that, because sometimes places like Facebook, YouTube, other journalistic organizations, quote unquote, they have their biases too. And so journalists play a role. They should be careful about what information they promote and not simply repeat information. You know, is there a journalist out there who's a good journalist who's ever put out a story that's false? Probably. Because they don't pay attention, and sometimes they need to hit that headline. But this isn't going to be enough, this kind of measure. We'll still encounter some misinformation. We still run the risk of spreading that misinformation and becoming unwitting agents. And the problem we face now, if you notice, when President Trump at the beginning of his presidency talked a lot about fake news and stopping the perpetrators of fake news, he was looked at as being totalitarian. He just wants to be a fascist dictator because he wants to stop you from getting news. And it's the news that he called fake, or that his circle called fake. Yet now we see stopping of fake news is being upheld by everybody who were the perpetrators of fake news. And it's generally set by their bias. So when you give somebody the power to censor what somebody else has to say, then you start violating constitutional First Amendment rights. Even if I'm telling you fake news, do I have the right to say it? I think a good way to look at this is Thomas Jefferson once said, liberty too must be limited in order to be possessed. So while we might have the liberty to cry fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire, should that action then be limited, or should there be consequences for doing that? If it is fake news, yes, there should be. But I believe the market and people's responses should be the consequence to fake news. Because what if there's a kernel of truth in the fake news? This is the problem that we face. How do you limit the First Amendment rights of somebody while maintaining safety from fake news? Does that mean, oh my God, did the Constitution actually mean that we then need to be people who are responsible for what we take in? Oh, that couldn't possibly be the meaning, could it? You're free to express what you want to believe. You're free to express your fake news. The Constitution guarantees you that right to do that. But what a Constitution does not guarantee you is the right, right to be free from the fallout or the consequence of you spreading false information or stupid ideas. There's going to be payback. There's going to be a comeuppance. There's going to be consequences for what you say. So the second suggestion is something for all of us. And let's face it, we generally aren't careful about what we choose to share from social media and news sources. In general, I'm speaking in general. And we aren't careful because we aren't in critical thinking mode when we look through our social media feeds. Did you turn off your critical thinking mode because you see an article that seems to, that feeds my side bias? Keep your critical thinking levers on. We're laughing at the cat and dog videos, and we're happy to see our friends and family enjoying life. But I hit the like buttons for most photos of friends with their children because I'm a dad and I have kids. I share information about the interesting local events. Like today, I'll share the information. My wife, Rainey, is going out of town for a few days with her mom to visit her brother in North Dakota. So they're going to be gone for a few days. So it's just Dad and the 3 kids home alone for the next 3 days. And so I share that stuff, and I'll probably take pictures. We'll probably read books and do stuff together and play together, watch movies together. And they'll probably all sleep in the bed with me. Everybody's going to pile in with the dog because Mom's gone. The youngest is having the toughest time with it. Ellery, my 5-year-old, she sat and cried getting ready for school this morning because she wasn't going to see Mom for 3 days. So we share those things on social media. And when I do this, I don't always turn on my critical academic self. But we can be more careful and we can limit the effects of misinformation. Ayanna Thomas in 2019 found that people can limit the use of misinformation from some classic eyewitness memory studies. And the simple thing is not to require answers from people. Instead, encourage people to withhold answers if they aren't sure. And when you do this, people are more likely to evaluate the information. And when they evaluate, they're less likely to provide misinformation they've encountered. And so this seems easily applicable in social media, and we need systems that encourage people to be more evaluative before sharing news information on social media. Part of that might include changes in social media platforms. And so essentially, we need to slow people down. We need to slow down our information. And when we slow it down, we do a better job of distinguishing fake and true information. So, folks, that's all we've got time for. I got to stop almost abruptly there because we're at the end of the show. Thanks for being here. 23-hour break. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Sit tight.